Well, here's the big one, 1961, John F. Kennedy. It's the big one because it is arguably the best. But if you get too much of an argument, well, okay, it's tied with FDR's first, or it's tied in historical moment with perhaps Lincoln, or it's in the top half dozen. Any way you shake it, it's a very important and excellent inaugural speech. Some archaic language, but mainly conversational and very powerful, thanks to speechwriter Theodore Sorensen. As recently as 2008, I was in a small group session in Denver during the nomination of future President Obama, and Theodore Sorensen was in that room recounting the presidential itinerary between about June and November 1963, and it was clear he was keeping the Camelot myth and legend and reality alive, and so did many of the other loyalists of the Kennedy era. Interesting. I was also on a TV program with Theodore Sorensen talking about speech writing, and he and all of the other loyalists have remained very loyal to Kennedy and have kept that myth alive. Now, here is the inaugural speech. Kennedy begins by attempting to depoliticize the electorate. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom. He improves on Eisenhower's trepidation at our ability to exterminate our species by giving it a positive spin. Man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. Let the word go forth was a biblical phrase and archaic then, and it still is now. It has been through all of history, perhaps since the King James Version of the Bible. But to appreciate its efficacy, you have to hear the Kennedy staccato delivery and see him beating a tattoo on the collective chest of the audience. Let the word go forth. It ends up being quite effective. His cadence is ideally suited to the setup, repeated jabs, and then the payoff, kind of like a volleyball game. Note that this long sentence that follows, I'm about to read it, is like 7 shorter sentences followed by a longer sentence that brings the matter to fruition. Here goes. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, in order to assure the survival and the success of liberty. He reaches out to the peoples in the huts and the villages around the globe. With a typical Kennedy juxtaposition, he notes that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Now, how much was Kennedy and how much was Sorensen is a point debated by historians. In a few lines of even over formal and even backwards talking, JFK notes the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though embattled we are. Few other speakers could have delivered this archaic construction that well. Thankfully, Kennedy reverts to plain speaking less than a minute later, stating, I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. Then, in the quintessential moment of high-minded theft from half a dozen other politicians and political thinkers, and remember, no disrespect, good artists borrow and great artists steal. JFK and Sorensen were great artists. Here's the payoff. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But wait, there's more. It gets better. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.